Have you ever been scared to speaking English simply because you don't sound like a native? Or maybe someone once told you, well, you know, your accent is actually too strong. I don't even understand what you're saying. Well, guess what? Accent and pronunciation are not the same thing. And today we're going to break down the difference between them, what actually matters, and how to improve each one of them in a smart and basically realistic way. This video will help you stop obsessing over sounding perfect and focus on what really makes your English better. Sound natural and clear. Hello everyone, my name is Daria and I am very happy to welcome you back here. If you don't know, this is the channel where we talk about self-development, motivation, languages, school, and even university in the future, because it's gonna be the year when I will apply to the universities, as it's gonna be my last school year. And I am more than happy to welcome all of the new subscribers or potential subscribers to here. Before we begin, I would like to advise you to go and follow on my Instagram. I am very active and you can see some kind of stories and maybe some storytellings from my days daily, basically on daily basis, is I appear there very often, and that's just for those who would like to see my pictures or who would like to communicate with me, because I reply to every single DM message that I get. And now I think that we are ready to begin, so let's go! So let's start with the basics. What's the difference between pronunciation and accent? Well, accent is how your voice sounds due to your basic native language background. It's more about melody, rhythm, and just intonation. As an example, a French person speaking English might have a French accent, just like any Ukrainian person might have Ukrainian accent speaking English. Just like any Italian person might have Italian accent speaking English, or German, or French. It doesn't mean that it's supposed to be necessarily wrong, it's just different. It's just a different way you pronounce words, the different way you pronounce different sounds, such as the, se, and anything else, such as R, depending on your background. Because, for example, English R and French R and Ukrainian R are completely different, and depending on your native language background, so the language you were speaking from the birth, this sounds might sound different from you when you speak English or any other foreign language. But then pronunciation. Well, that's how correctly you say individual sounds and words in the language. So as an example, saying think like sink is a pronunciation mistake. Just like saying tree instead of saying three, just the same thing. It's just all about pronunciation. In other words, you can have an accent and still speak very clearly. And you can try to sound native, but just mispronounce basic words. See the difference? And now, the big question. So what's more important, accent or pronunciation? Well, it might be quite obvious from what I've said before, but basically here is the truth. Clear pronunciation helps people understand you. And basically that's all it takes. A native-like accent might sound impressive, so if you sound like British or you sound more American, but it isn't necessary for communication. You know, just sounding American isn't very necessary to buy an ice cream or to go and get your documents done or to apply to a job. So think about it this way. Some of the best English teachers or international speakers still have accents, but their pronunciation is on point. And they are super easy to follow. If people constantly ask you to repeat yourself, it's probably much more about your pronunciation, not just your accent causing confusion. Basically, you don't need to erase yourself, to erase your identity, or, you know, imitate Americans or Brits. You just need to speak clearly and with confidence. Now, how can you actually improve your pronunciation? Here is my 5-step plan. First, and the most important, is going to be listen actively. That implies watching YouTube, Netflix, TED Talks, but don't just watch, imitate. So pause the video, repeat what they said, notice where their tongue is, how their lips move, and the melody. The second one is obviously going to be the phonetic tools. So you can use different kind of websites, such as Youglish, Vervo, or my favorite one is obviously going to be Cambridge Dictionary audio tool. So basically, what they do is showing you how do native speakers pronounce different sounds, different words, different collocations in obviously different kind of accents: American, English, British, and other kind of accents. Step number 3 is going to be to record yourself. I know it can be uncomfortable, it can feel uncomfortable to record you at first. It does have a very, very good and great output. So you have to use your phone. Say the same sentence 3 times, compare with the native speakers. Why do we use our phones? Why do we even have to record ourselves? Well, normally how your brain works is that when you speak, you do not hear your own accent, you don't hear your own pronunciation. For yourself, when you just speak, everything will sound perfect. But then, if you listen to what you said in your recording, doesn't matter if it's going to be just a voice message or if it's going to be an actual video where you talk about something about like your day or any great achievement that you've made or anything, you will probably hear how clear or how unclear your pronunciation is, how great or not great your accent is. So why do we even do it? Basically, it's done just to understand how do you sound for others. So you have to listen to your own recording and then make sure that you understand every single word, not just because you know what you said, but because it actually sounds clear. And if it doesn't, if you hear how you say ze instead of the article, then there is a problem with pronunciation. And then you know your weaknesses and you know your strengths. Then you don't have to work on your strengths, but you have to work on your weaknesses. Now, I know it's very difficult to comprehend. It's very difficult to force ourselves, first of all, to start working on something that is so difficult to achieve. And that's basically what happens with every single skill. It could be maths, it could be physics, it could be history, or just anything else. And basically, language is also a skill that you have to acquire, that you have to learn how to use, and that you have to practice all the time, or otherwise you will just forget how to use it. Just like you will forget how to solve all the kinds of chemistry equations if you don't solve them for about like 3 years. That's the same with language. And you have to practice it all the time to keep it going, to not let it go, to not let it fade to black. Basically, for us humans, it is very, very difficult to do something that doesn't go just right from the first time, because you feel bad, you feel like you are maybe not the one, you feel like maybe someone is cooler than you. But then that's where your actual progress is, and that's where your actual achievements will be. Then it's going to be a quite tiring step 4, which is going to be learn the basic pairs. These small sound changes make a big, big difference. The step number 5 is going to be quite obvious: get feedback. And I'm not only talking about a feedback from a native speaker, but also a feedback from just basically a language teacher, like an English teacher or German teacher, depending on the language you learn, or just simply use an AI tool. Just the very last thing about feedback is going to be that you can't fix something that you don't know is broken. So basically, it's just that simple. And if you will ask any AI tool or a teacher and they will tell you that, well, yeah, you know, your pronunciation could be better, then that's something that you have to work with. But if you do not even know that you have to fix something and you're just trying to, you know, learn many fancy words, but then you can't pronounce the basic ones correctly, that's where the problem is. And you can't really just run for something when you do not know how to walk. And now let's carry on with section 4. All right, so some of you might be thinking, but what if I still want to sound like a native? What if I want to sound more British or American? Is that even possible for me? And basically, the very simple answer, one word answer, is going to be yes. Yes, it is. But there is a lot of but. First of all, it takes a lot of time, patience, and it isn't even necessary to speak well. And then also, what exact accent do you want? Here are hundreds and hundreds of English accents. American, Scottish, Nigerian, Indian, Australian, and many others. If you do want to train your accent, you have to focus more on rhythm and sentence stress, as well as intonation, not just individual sounds like for pronunciation. Best advice probably is going to be just to mimic native speakers of the accent that you really want to acquire, such as Australian, American, British, most likely. One of them is going to be, one of my favorite ones, to be honest, is going to be audiobooks. Basically, shadowing them is a very great step towards your goal. Imitate the emotions and flow. What's such a cool thing about them? How can they help me acquire a great accent and pronunciation? Here is a different way of using them, and that's something that I fell in love with when I just started to learn English. What you have to do is have both the book and the audiobook, because many times I had to face the situation myself when I was reading a book, and then I would come across a word that I didn't know the meaning of, and I would either just skip it or read it however I feel like it should be read, but then I didn't know how exactly to pronounce it. And then whenever in class I had to say it, or when I was talking to someone, I just wasn't sure how to pronounce it, and then I would pronounce it wrong and people wouldn't understand what do I mean, what am I saying. So the best way to kind of stay away from that is basically using audiobooks. So first you put the audiobook on, and then you have to follow the text with your eyes, but listen to it and actually get into the meaning of the text of the book with your ears. This way, when you listen to someone who is, for example, British, you will hear how exactly do they pronounce every single word. First of all, it's gonna kind of force you to read faster, but second of all, it's also a very great way just to practice the pronunciation and speaking. And whenever you come across the word that you are struggling with, or one that you didn't understand the meaning of, or you're not sure how to pronounce, just repeat it after the speaker a couple of times. To wrap this up, your accent tells the story of where you're from, and that's beautiful. Your pronunciation, on the other hand, is what makes your speech clear, and that's powerful. That's something that everybody has to acquire. You don't need to sound native. You need to sound like the best version of you in English. Work on your pronunciation, own your accent, and of course, speak with courage. Now it's your turn. Comment below and tell me, do you like your own accent or do you hate it? What's the hardest English sound for you? And if you want a follow-up video where I show you how I personally improved my own pronunciation, just let me know. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and of course, turn on your notifications, because we are building a confident and of course, international generation here. This was Daria, and see you in the next one. Adios!